Good evening, everybody. Father Jason here. This time I'm coming to you live from my home. It's about 9 o'clock at night, and I'm just now getting around to doing our Luke video for today. Actually, we're catching up and didn't get to it yesterday, taking care of last minute Christmas preparations here around the house and at the church. Today is got to do a lot of baking and stuff after church today. That was a lot of fun, getting ready for Christmas. And I hope things are wrapping up for you as well for a fun and festive time as we celebrate the nativity, the incarnation of God, Emmanuel, God with us. But before that, we're going to kill him. Yes, we are in Luke 22 and 23, near the end of the book. And so we are getting the crucifixion. We get starting with Luke 22. First, we have the institution of the Eucharist, where Jesus reframes the Passover. I thought I was going to sneeze there. I apologize for that. Anyway, Jesus reframes the Passover meal as putting himself as the Paschal lamb, and institutes the Eucharist and the bread and wine being his body and blood that we share. And what we call the Eucharist now is also known as the Lord's Supper or communion. And then they go to the garden and Jesus prays, and then he's arrested. He's betrayed by Judas and arrested, and then he's put on trial. And that takes us through the end of 22 and into 23. And finally, he is then crucified. And then at the end of 23, he is buried. So that's basically a rough outline of these two chapters. Something I want to highlight, though, when they're at table, when they're sitting down for this Passover meal, and Jesus is about to do the cup and the bread, and the way the tradition is about to institute that tradition that we carry on today. He says in verse 15 of chapter 22, he said to them, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." So he just set the tone. Like, we're doing this before it all goes down. He's laying it out for them. Yet, as soon as they get done with the cup and the bread, it says in verse 24, a dispute arose among them as to which one of them was to be regarded as the greatest. We've been here before. Jesus has predicted his death and his suffering. And then the next thing the author of this gospel tells us is that the disciples get in a dispute about who is the greatest. It happens twice, at least twice, here in Luke. It also happens in Mark a couple of times. And it just seemed to be a pattern. Jesus would predict that, hey, this is all going to come to a head and end in a very violent way. And then they would go, well, which one of us is the greatest? And that turns it turns our notion of these disciples on its head, because they're the ones that are the closest with Jesus. They're the ones that Jesus sent out on his behalf to heal and to preach in his name. But yet they can't get it through their head that what's coming is a path of pain. Jesus goes on to say in verse 25, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, the greatest among you must become like the youngest, and the leader like one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at table or the one who serves? Is it not the one at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. So Jesus lays that down as the path that they are of discipleship. It is a path of service. And this gets even most dramatically exemplified just a little bit later during the crucifixion scene. There are two thieves that are also crucified with Jesus, one on his left and one on his right. We're into verse 20, into chapter 23 now. And one of them is mocking Jesus, like, why can't you save us? Why can't you get, if you're the Messiah, why can't you fix this and just get us off the cross, off these crosses, and save our lives? And the other one is like, dude, we're here because of what we did. Jesus is innocent, and yet he is being crucified. And he turns to Jesus and he says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. So Jesus has done a lot of this all through Luke, of reversing things. of saying that the lowest will be the greatest. And the one amongst you that serves is the ones that are actually the greater good, not those in power, not the powers that be. And so here is the lowest of the low, a thief, a convicted criminal who's being executed, who says to Jesus, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. This act of humility gets a response out of Jesus when he replies, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. So we have in these two stories these disciples who just don't get it, who yet are still looking for fame and glory, even though death is imminent. Jesus' death is imminent. And then we get a criminal who is at the lowest point that any human being can be at. He's in the process of being killed by the state, crucified, a slow, excruciating death of suffocation. And yet he has this act of humility that he pleads with Jesus. And that is when Jesus says, you will be with me in paradise. So I think these two things, even at the cross, at the climax of this story, Luke is still talking about those who are accepted into the community aren't the ones we expect. We have a tendency, a natural human tendency, to cuddle up to those in power and to uh, want to have their esteem and to give them places of honor. And Luke says, nope, 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 nope. It's the ones on the margins that Jesus is going to bring in. Jesus has put out his embrace. We have a prayer in the Episcopal Church that talks about Jesus's embrace extending on the cross to surround everyone, including those that the powers that be in the society would tell us don't fit. We see that even in the crucifixion scene. So I just want to point those out. Tomorrow, hoping to get a video posted really early in the morning. Got a big day planned with lots going on, but I want to start with the last chapter. Not even going to tell you what's in it. Not even going to tell you what's in it. Let's read it together tomorrow. You probably have a good guess of what's coming, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. And look forward to concluding our journey through Luke. It's been a wonderful Advent to read Luke along with y'all. If you have any comments or questions, please post them, and we'll be glad to have that carry on the conversation even further. Also, feel free to share these videos as far and wide so that we can get the good news of Jesus Christ, his life, death, and his resurrection. Oh, gave it away. Sorry. His life, death, and resurrection, and we spread that good news as far as we can. And we'll look to finish up tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm Father Jason Emerson, and I want you to remember, God loves you more than you could possibly imagine.